Purpose for this demonstration is to show you guys the web time card system. The web time card system's purpose is to allow people over the web to interface with the project system and enter time against projects. And the system's requirements would be that you're running IIS on a machine that has access to the outside, and that somewhere in the system there's an SQL server to receive the data. With those two things in mind, we go to a typical website. We would type in some sort of address, or it could be a link on your website, whatever you want to do. In my case, it's going to be a machine name, but the point is you get to some IP address, and basically you get to a login screen such as this, and then there's several different types of users that can log on. The first one being a technician, the second one being a supervisor that can sign off on technicians' time, and the third type of person would be a person that's an admin user that does the administrative tasks related to this tool. So I'm going to first log on as a technician, and when I do that, I get a screen menu option that's related to the technicians. In this case, I can enter a time, I can enter expenses, I can list my time, list my expenses, and I can change my password. This password does interact with the enhanced security setup tables with inside the project system, so this is where this is actually ultimately going. When I press my time card sheet, I have basically a calendar, or I should say a week's calendar here. And what has happened is in my I've set the week period to be from 12/14 all the way out to 12/20, and you can see that I've actually entered some time, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 5:30 in this case, so it gives me an 8-hour day. It automatically takes off a half an hour for lunch if it's over 6 hours. We've got a valid project number in the system, and we've got several types of labor that can be entered into a project. This is semi-user definable, but this is what the list has in it right now. And this type A, incidentally, is designed for union work, whereas everything else would be at regular pay. So we've accommodated that as well. So the technician would come in, log into the system, enter their time. Now I've simply done a simple 9 to 5, but for instance, if a person came in, had to work overtime, and let's say they started from 6 p.m. to maybe 1 a.m., if you will, had to do an emergency service call for a particular job, then the system would be some call out. And let's say I'll just put the same project number for validation purposes. And so that's how the system can allow a person to enter time. And there's actually 12 entries per day is what I've done here. So the system sets us up for 12 by 7 entries. And then we haven't really put a signature capture field in, but we're using this checkbox as the authentication. Yes, I'm submitting this time. And then you hit the post. And then the system goes ahead and updates the database on the SQL server with these times. Unfortunately, this is the one thing, it does take a little bit of time because of all the time that it takes to churn through all these different fields. So that's the one flaw I see in the system, but other than that, it's pretty good. And the system will go ahead and post time to the database server. And it successfully posted our time, and you see here the project number. The greens are good. If there were a red, the reds would indicate a project that either invalid project number or something you did invalid, and then you could go back to fix this. Now, these project numbers, incidentally, are validated. These are actually real project numbers that are in the project system. There's actually a tool that we turn on inside project to update the SQL server with the fact that these are valid project numbers. And that's how we post time to a project. Now, the one thing I can offer you, if you don't like that time card entry system as far as the screen, I also have a time card entry system that I can make available that's very similar to the expense one, where you just enter a, it's just, this I'm just the expense, just an example, and the date of the expense was on this, but I can also make available a time cards screen that just looks like this, and you just put the date and time, and then you can just hit some most. This, of course, will go away very nice and fast because it's simple. It doesn't have to go through all that churning. So I can make available a screen where it's just date and time, date and time, date and time, date and time. That's also available. When I hit this, oh, I forgot to hit my checkbox. It just goes ahead and submits this guy, and he's done posting. So I can make it so if you want to use the other screen like that, I can make that available. Now, once the time has been entered, the technician or person entering the time can go look at a report and see all the time that they've got entered in the system. And they can also look at expenses for the current period of time, so they can look at their data and see if everything is what they expect. So that's the time card posting as far as the technicians. Any questions before I show you the admin, the next login?
What about there isn't a valid job number available for project yet?
You're going to have to use a, you'll have to establish a dummy project number, like, call it SoundCom or something like that, so that they have something to post against.
And then a manager or somebody can change the project number later?
I guess I could make that available. That's not currently available. We'd have to make some kind of a, I guess we'd have to do a query to make that, change that later on to the right project number. It's a good question. Yes, ma'am, sir.
I got another question. Like a technician, let's use that for an example. The technician was calling in his time on a valid job number, and do you give them a limit after they post it? They can't go back and rewrite it?
Well, they can make, today, until we close the period, they can make changes to this. So you can make, they can make changes to that time card screen. If I were to bring this up a second time, I could make changes to this until I close the period. Right now, it's a period-based system. So right now, this is in the current period. So it brings up the same time. Say that a different way.
Can that time frame be reduced to a day or two?
Okay, so once the technician has gone ahead and posted their time, then we can do is log in as a supervisor. And that supervisor has the ability to list hours by technician if they want. They can list expenses by technician, just all that kind of good stuff. And they can also sign off on that time, and they can choose a technician and then select. And it brings up the time card system. And then they can go ahead and say, yes, I accept this time. and then they just do a checkbox, and they just do a sign-off sheet just like the technicians did, and they basically approve that time. And they can also do the same thing with the expenses. They can approve the expenses. Now, none of this has hit the project system yet from a job cost position. It's sitting in a, we call it a current period set of tables. But it's all on the SQL server, so from either outside or inside your network you would get to this. And now, so those things have been signed off on, and they can change their password too, but that's about it. Okay, now, then the next thing that happens is an administrative person goes in, and what they do is they basically close the period. Now, before we do that, there are some reports that are available inside the project system. So what we've done here is we've given a new option, web-based time card system, and what you can do is you can, hours by technician, so you can look at some reports that have been written inside the project system. And when I look at those reports, and I'll full screen that, and there we go. So this is the time that's been entered for one technician. Of course, it'd be multiple technicians, but there's your time, and there's your sign-off by the supervisor, and these are the jobs. These jobs are going to be posted to it. So we can see that this technician has worked 40 hours plus 18 hours and 18.5 hours overtime. And you've got little IDs and things that can be edited based on your GL tables and things like that. So this is a report that's available, and this is, again, looking at the current table, not the closed table. So we're looking at the current table. So this is all done in live, and you can say, let's say, whatever your end of your period is, you can run these reports and say, yes, I agree with all this. And then once you're happy with those reports, we would then close the period. So here we go, back to the web system, and we do a close period. We hit here, close period. And it says we've got all these different entries we want to close, and we say yes. And we close that period, and then what we do is we change the period date range for the next period, and we go ahead and set the next period up, be it the 21st through the 17th, or in your case, you're going to make it a 2-week pay period. Okay, and so now the period's been closed, and now when the technician logs in, they can now enter time into the new period. Is that making sense so far?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, inside project, what happens there is now we can, if we want, we can run the same reports against the close period. And we've got reports by technician, by department, expenses, various reports. They're all available now against the close table. And, of course, we're going to get the exact same report that we had from the current period. It's just in the close table. So, there's your data sitting now in the closed period table. Now, what the purpose of the closed period table is to take it to the next step, which is, 1, import those times into the job cost module of project system. So we just come down here to import closed period time and expenses. We hit start, and the system goes ahead and imports that time right into the job cost module of project. Now, the other thing that can happen, which I haven't written, but I can write for you guys, is I can create an export that can go to Mass 90 in your case, or to an Excel file, so you'd have to give me some direction as to how you want me to get this into the other systems, like ADP or other time card systems, other payroll systems. So you just tell me the spec, and I'll write an Excel file. Now that's an additional cost, of course, but the data is there to support this, and we just write it to either Mass 90 in your case, or to ADP's format, or some other format that's available. So in the closed period, all that data is now inside the project system, and we would add one more link to this system where it says create export for other system, and then you specify Mass 90 or ADP or whatever that is you want me to write it to. And then that table data is sitting there in that format that you would suck it into Mass 90 or ADP or whatever. And if you want to see what happens inside project, if I were just to run a job cost detail report on that project and we did the posting to it, we see here exactly what's happened is all that time that we just did is now entered in the job cost module, and we also have our expense. There's that $100 expense that I just entered just a minute ago, is now sitting in our job cost report inside Project System. And we would look down at our, if we would look down at our, in our job cost report here, we would see estimated hours, 800 hours, actual hours, 126. And that's all posted electronically via the system I'm showing you here. So that's the time card system, and that's how it interfaces in the project. Any questions before I stop this recording?
If we had a miscellaneous job for like shop time.
Sure, absolutely.
And we wanted to put a comment like whether they were loading trucks or picking up cars, or is there a place for a comment?
Well, that would be, if we go back to that same screen, if we go back to that screen that I was just talking to you about, that I would make available to you, and that I'll make available at no charge, because I just have to change the database to make it happen. If you were to, in that system, there would be, you know, some entries, beginning date, ending date, you know, and then the purpose, and this is where you would put your, you know, shop time, travel, That's exactly what you would do, and then and you would use that shop project called shop or whatever you want to call it. And what you could do is you could create a series of projects: vacation, sick, how personal. You could actually create those jobs, and they would just sit in some valid status in project system, so that you could actually later on do reports against that project and see how much time it's costing you for shop, how much time it's costing you for travel, how much time it's costing you for training. You got what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You just create little projects, and then inside the project system, I can go to my job cost report here, and we have additional report here called labor by technician, and if you specify a project number, and if that project number is called training, and you specify the date range, now I'm going to get a report of all the training costs for the month of X.
Tony, can you have can a supervisor or the admin want to get? They could post. Can they post someone else's time?
Yes, that's exactly right. Exactly correct. In the case of the admin person, NASCA, the admin person has post time card entry capabilities, and they choose a technician, in this case Tony. Now in this case they get the exact same time card system that we saw before. So the answer is yes, an admin person has the ability to post time for other people. If they're out, either they're out for sick pay or holiday pay, or they're just not in, they can't get to the computer for some reason. Absolutely correct.
Okay. Any other questions? How many users at any one time can use the web to input their?
There's no restriction on that, and this does not affect your license count that's inside Project System.
What about additional note fields, or can a technician enter in a small text field such as percentage complete or any notes of hours?
No, this is the internal, again, time card sheet that currently exists in Project. The way I set that screen up right now, and it looks very similar to this, basically it's the job, the hours they spent, and I'll just make that a date range. It'll be start and stop. I'll go ahead and make it start and stop time, the date of the work, the phase of the work they can put in there right now, and then your notes. And I did have the pay type is available too, so if this was overtime hours, they can go ahead and put the overtime hours in. That's all accommodated for them based on the, I'll have to think about that screen a little bit, but whether we use the pay rate or not. But this is what's currently in the project system. The answer to your question is they can put a note in here, but it doesn't do anything with the job about % complete.
Okay.
Nice idea.
You could write in there 8 hours job 50% complete.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, right. You could do this. So if I just do that entry, the same thing. If I do 110202 tab 00 is where that breaks, and then 8 hours day, and then the date of the work they did. And then now this is in this particular screen, it's going right in. This is going right into the system, and then here would be 50% complete. Now this guy's going straight in, as I said, repeating myself here. Okay, and then we hit post, continue to post, yes, and that's gone straight into the system. Now, if I were to look at the job cost report based on that right now, wrong section. Job cost report, look at this right there. If we come down to the screen, oh, there we go. It's at the top. So there's my 50% complete.
Tony, you have on the web, on the website.
Yes.
Where, the one that was formatted more like the expenses.
Yes.
Side of things.
Yes.
There was a little spot in there I saw for. It looked like purpose. Can you manually input that?
Yeah, that's a purpose that's open for your discussion. Let me see. That's back on this screen here. Cancel, yes. And that was post expenses, choose technician's ID. Tony, happy, go, fine, good. Yeah, this one had, now this is expense, but the time card thing looked very similar to this.
So if I type in purpose, can I type 50% complete?
Yeah, it'll be the same field, absolutely same field, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And Tony, one other question regarding the description field. How many character limits are there?
I'd have to look for you. It's a combination of both of these fields. They both go into the description field, which is a combination of 64 characters. So the two of them can't be more than 64 characters.
I'm trying to think of a reason why you'd have a description and a purpose, I guess.
Well, the way they did this was gasoline. It says gasoline. And then the location could be the city, and then the purpose, I had to go do something. Location, and you fill in a location, and then a purpose. So that, in this expense report, it's actually, let's see, job parts. Well, I went to job parts for a particular job, and I had to, a second part of the reason, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, these variables are actually changing depending on which one I drop down. This actually description field actually changes, and then it would be just like membership. Okay, membership would be what is membership and why do we have that membership? Something like that. Cool.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah. You mentioned that you can write.
All right, I'm gonna